Hello, how are you? This is Dan Hall, one of the hosts of Anomalies, and I'm here with my friend and co-anchor, I guess you're an anchor, co-host, Gwen Farrell. How are you doing, Gwen?
Good, doing great.
Good. So I'm always gratified when we have return guests, and today we have a guest that I've not only done a show with him, but I hung out with him in Michigan at a UFO conference. So I kind of feel like I know John a little bit. So John Budrys is our guest today, and we're just going to go over a whole bunch of things. So John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah,
Welcome.
and you could check out the previous show we did with John on palmistry. Just as a reminder to the people listening to this, please like and subscribe to our video. That helps us our numbers out. And John, let's kind of start maybe with you, with kind of my familiarity with you in the UFO field. You and I believe Gwen too, at one point in time, we were all field investigators for MUFON. Is that correct? Am I
Yes.
correct in that? Well, tell us about that. What was it like being a field investigator for MUFON?
Probably the best way to describe it is if somebody would approach me at a MUFON meeting or something and say, I'm thinking about becoming a field investigator, you got any tips or anything? And I say, I'm probably just one or two people that are like in Michigan that are on a part-time or uh, on hold basis, but I'm probably the oldest field investigator, not by age, but by length of term in Michigan. So people look to me like, an experienced field investigator. And I'd say, you know what? There's some good things and there's some bad things about it. The good things are it's extremely interesting to actually be able to talk to the witness, uh, sometimes face to face, ask them any question you like. Sometimes they can take you right out to the spot where they saw the object, point to the direction. You can look and see for yourself. Is there any lights or anything that could have been mistaken? Ask them all the questions you like. Anything much, much, much better than reading about an account in a book where you have these questions and no way to ask the witness. Here's the witness right in front of you. They saw it with their wife or their co-worker or something. Well, can I talk to the wife or the co-worker too? How about your neighbors? Did the neighbors see anything at that time? I don't know. The guy says, I never asked them. Well, I see one of them out there weeding in the garden. Could be, would you think they mind? Would you mind? No, that sounds good. So we march over there. I mean, you can't do that when you're reading a book. Those are the plus things. And what I also like doing, and I think MUFON sort of frowns on this, but I give them a copy of my final report, ask them to please correct any major mistakes I made. And I just give them plenty of time, not a whole bunch, but I tend to talk a lot of time asking questions about, well, what do you think their UFOs are about? Where do you think they're from? I think they deserve a little bit of, a few answers from the big UFO expert that came to investigate their sighting. And I think they deserve that for the time they put in, the courage they had to put in their sighting. On the flip side, the bad thing about it is the MUFON report. Oh my God, latitude and longitude. Damn, I gave you the city. I gave you the intersection, you got to get the weather from Weather Underground. I don't trust Weather Underground. I trust what the witness tells me. And if the witness says it was clear and I could see the stars, I don't care if Weather Underground says that the cloud ceiling was at 3,000 feet. The witness said they could see the stars. The cloud ceiling was infinite as far as I'm concerned. And I know Weather Underground stations aren't everywhere. Weather can be different 2 blocks over, you got to fill out this thing, and then you're highly encouraged to come up with a mundane explanation. Could it have been an airplane? If you're 80% sure, then you can go ahead and go with that. Wait a minute, 80%. I've often said, in fact, the last FI meeting, field investigator meeting we had in Michigan, I think I became persona non grata. I talked about them making sausage. You know, you just grind these things out. You know, it's like they say, you don't want to see how sausage is made. You don't want to see how their dispositions are come up with. If they 80% of the details of the sighting seem like it could have been an airplane, they say, okay, I'm confident enough. I say, you know what? You could have 10 details and 8 of them may be explainable, but it's that last one. The object didn't go in a straight line. It zigzagged in the sky. Airplanes or satellites or meteors or whatever don't zigzag in the sky or reverse direction or make a 90-degree turn. That one fact alone makes it an unknown in my mind. But people will say, well, 80% of the details seem to match an airplane. And so I'll go ahead and call it an airplane because the person could have had eye trouble. Yeah, they could have, you know. I saw a case where in that last meeting we had, a case was discussed that was dismissed as the woman saw the moon. The woman had gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and looked out her window and saw an object which she thought was about 20 feet away from her bathroom window. And then the next thing she knew, it was 2 hours later. Duh. It sounds like something happened. It was dismissed as the woman saw the moon because the moon happened to be out about the same area, about the same time. Wait a minute, this woman's lived in this house for decades. She's gone to the bathroom in that room for decades. She's seen the moon all her life. Why would she suddenly mistake the moon for an object she claims is 20 feet away from her window? But that's the way sausage is made there. I'll tell this to prospective field investigators. I'll say, you know what? You're going to have to deal with the MUFON crap, but it's awfully interesting talking to the witnesses and trying to be a little helpful to them. So I stay with being a field investigator, although I don't get too many more cases. I think I become persona non grata.
If someone aspires to be a MUFON field investigator, and we know that, having done that, how does one become one? What do you have to do to qualify?
Oh, there's they've added more requirements. Basically, it used to be you have to buy $100 book or the online equivalent, which was not real good because you couldn't easily reference the thing. But this book of instructions for how to conduct an investigation, including taking sterile soil samples and all kinds of details, you know, how to deal with radioactivity and stuff. Basically, 95% of it is stuff that no one's ever going to run into, except on extremely rare occasion. But you got to buy the book, then you got to take a test. It's an open book test. And it's a little bit tricky. Some of the questions are kind of trick questions. Yeah. But if you pass the test and you're not certified yet, but you're accepted as a field investigator, you got to put in a little time. They've recently introduced you got to take some classes at MUFON University, which I think I've been a field investigator for now almost 8 years. I don't think I need to take classes, you know. So I haven't yet, but I don't know. I may have to. I don't know if I really want to.
Gwen, do you want to? Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, Gwen, do you want to add anything to being a field investigator since you were one at one point in time?
No, I would just echo what John has said, is that there are some good things about it and there's some bad things, or some not in some negative. I wouldn't say bad, I'd just say not really interesting things. But people do have experiences, and it is interesting to know what is happening in people's lives and what's happening out there. And that's a way that you can find out. And if you don't mind doing a lot of paperwork and having this giant organization on top of you, then it's a good place, I think, where you can learn. I'll stop there. What do you think, Dan? You were part of it too.
Well, I was really part of it for a fairly short time. I only really had one case that I thought was really interesting. So that was kind of frustrating for me. I was hoping to get all kinds of cases that were just, wow, that really happened to you. I didn't have that kind of experience. John, tell us about some cases that you investigated that you found very interesting.
Oh, wasn't prepared to really talk about that. Let me think quickly here.
Okay.
Well, one of the last cases I looked at, a guy, he runs a machine shop in Detroit, uh, high precision machine shop. It's pretty much him and one employee he had. He said he was outside in the parking lot about 2:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, sunny day. He's on a flight path with Detroit Metro Airport, so he sees planes regularly. He was talking to his father on the phone, and I think I can remember all the details of this pretty well. And he saw an object in the distance. It seemed to be it was, I forget how it was moving originally, but it was about maybe 2-3 miles away. And as soon as he noticed it, as he started to look at it, it started heading right towards him. And then stopped about, I think it was about 200 feet, maybe 150 feet from him, went parallel to the fence line of his back parking lot, and then took off in a slightly different direction. He, about halfway through the sighting, he yelled into the shop, "Hey, Fred," whatever the guy's name, the employee, "come on out here. I think I'm seeing a UFO." And he also told his dad over the phone. And the two of them looked at it, and he said they both saw what seemed to be like some kind of chain or cable coming out of the bottom of it, and flashes of light. And then he pointed out that things got eerily quiet. Now, Gwen will know what I'm talking about here. But I was going to say, we were talking earlier, that's one of the things about having worked at ERT and EST and working with other experiencers is you learn about the little things, sometimes not so subtle, that tip you off that maybe more than just a simple sighting happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a name for that. It's called the Oz effect, where things get eerily quiet and unreal. And then I asked him, how did the sighting end? And he goes, I really don't remember. In fact, my employee and I were talking about it afterwards, and we both don't recall how it ended. And I said, buddy, I think more happened to you than you recall. You might be interested in maybe having a hypnosis session or something if you're interested in that. I never push anything on anybody, but a lot of times people are interested. And I said, I think more might come out. Never heard anything more from the guy, but that was a pretty interesting one. And the case I was talking about earlier, this is not one I investigated, just one that we talked about in our FI meeting, where the woman looked out her bathroom window and then suddenly it was 2 hours later. That would have been a bing to me. I described those terms as like bing, little hints, I thought I saw an owl, bing,
Yeah. Oh.
Suddenly it got real quiet, bing.
Now, I would say, I think that one of the drawbacks with MUFON, and I guess I can understand this in a way, is that you're very limited. There is so much more in this phenomenon. And if you continue like we all have, actually into the contact portion of it, talking to people who believe they've had some kind of contact other than just a light in the sky. You see that with groups like MUFON, who have investigators, they're very limited. They're not encouraged to go further, and they're not trained to go further, and they don't know what to do. And that can be problematic for people. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. There are definitely similarities, things that you start to see that are very similar.
I will say this too, it's probably heresy. But if MUFON heard this, and I don't know if I really care at this point, but I don't trust MUFON anymore. I mean, I know they're selling data. They've done it in the past with Bigelow. They're doing it nowadays. I mean, I think it was Dave McDonald it was the January or the March issue last year of the MUFON Journal, cheerfully said that they've had contracts with the DOD, Defense Department, for decades. Not a decade, but decades with an S. And the previous couple issues, he talked about going to Washington, talking to every head of the intelligence committee in Washington about MUFON working with the three-letter agencies. And I think there's just too many indicators that MUFON is selling data. When I approach MUFON members about this, they're actually quite pleased. Oh, we're getting recognition as a legitimate organization. I think from a perspective of a witness or an experiencer, most people want to be somewhat confidential, or at least a majority, let's say, of people don't want it spread around the neighborhood or their place of work or their church or their community that they saw a UFO, especially if there's any indications that they were taken. They don't want that to get out. And so this is the heresy part. What I generally do is I'll in my report, try and make it short and sweet. I've been criticized before about putting in really lengthy reports when I first started, because I thought, hey, if they're going to be a scientific organization, they need every detail. And I was like, "What, John, do you have to write so much?" Well, I wrote down every detail, and now I just address the subject sighting. What did they see? Because I'll also talk to them about, so, ever had any other sightings? Anybody in your family ever had any sightings? Ever had any psychic experiences? Boom! All of a sudden the doors swing open and all this stuff comes flooding out. I don't include that in my reports, but a lot of times my conclusion from working with a lot of people, investigating a lot of cases, has been, I don't think they being the aliens accidentally show themselves to people, especially when it's a close-up. If they're way high in the sky, maybe. But if they come and land in your backyard, they didn't do that by accident. They got their eye on you. And then especially if you have several sightings, they got their eye on you. They start asking more. I mean, that's like a big bing, 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 bing for me. And I generally start asking more questions at that point, and then the floodgates open, and none of that will go in my MUFON report, because I think I don't want to label this person as an experiencer, his family members, his kids, and have it be sold to some three-letter agency. No way. So I'll do my duty. I'll put in a report on the subject sighting. Person saw this light, blah, 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 But all the other stuff remains between me and the witness.
You mentioned an interesting name that some people may know about and some people may not. You used the term Bigelow, or the name Bigelow. Who's that?
Robert Bigelow, revered by some, despised by others, but he made his money on Econo Lodge, I think, weekly stay places. He's like a bazillionaire and has an interest in paranormal and UFO stuff, and has funded a number of studies to include, I think it was in 2011, 2010, he signed a contract with MUFON, which you can find online. I looked it up. It's rather alarming. He paid him $600,000 for data. The best cases, the cream of the crop that he would go out and investigate then. And also that included any material that was recovered, like pieces of flying saucer. He got first dibs on. And he's assembled a team of real scientists, not just people that live in their mom's basement and want to be a field investigator, that yes, they're like me. No, I'm kidding. But he's a big person in the field. I think he had a contest. Didn't he have a contest recently, Gwen, about somebody would get like some big prize, $500,000 for the best argument for there being an afterlife? Wasn't that Bigelow?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it
I
was.
think so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The other thing he's involved in is, or was involved in, is the Skinwalker Ranch,
Yes.
which is,
He owned it,
And
which he
he
owned.
owned it. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
and a number of scientists that came back from the place ended up with attachments, which I'm familiar with from we were going to talk about shamanism. That's one thing I would like to talk about, but
Mhm.
they came back with that. I've experienced those as well. They're not easy to get rid of. I don't recommend getting one, just for fun. Um, but yeah, no, he's very much. I think the world needs more of those people. Like I say, some people don't like him. They disagree with how he does things, but at least somebody's doing something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I understand, John, that you, even though you're still, as you say, at least you have one foot in MUFON as a field investigator, and that you are kind of where the rest of us are now, and that is having moved beyond that, beyond lights in the sky, to working with individual people, talking with people. And I'm not going to ask you to take a lot of time today to talk about what you've done. And a lot of those things should remain confidential anyway. And but I'll just ask you, um, just give us a brief kind of history about what you've done in the area of working directly with experiencers, and what might include what you're doing now on your own, and just kind of let us know what you're doing in those areas.
Okay,
And
real quick.
tell our
Re
listeners what Opus is,
uh,
because I think that's
Eventually, yeah.
okay.
But real
Yep.
quickly, I got talking to Kathleen Martin at a Phoenix UFO conference. I think it was a 2015 one. And then after I actually was able to buy her a drink, a couple of drinks actually, and we talked for quite a while. It was very interesting talking to her. And then it was about I don't know, year later or something, I saw something in the MUFON Journal that said they were looking for people for the ERT group that Kathleen ran, and please submit so I wrote Kathleen and I said, hey, remember me? I'm the long-haired old guy that you talked to at the Phoenix conference, and we shared a few drinks together, and I'd be interested. And so she, from sizing me up, I think at Phoenix,
Mhm.
she accepted me in the group. And that was when it was still kind of small. I think it was about 18 people at the time or something like that. It's grown since then, but then there was I talked to a whole bunch of people, kind of learned on the job. But I think Kathleen figured out I was okay to try and be helpful to experiencers. But then December of 2021, MUFON issued the edict that no longer were our conversation is going to be private and confidential, that every detail was going to be entered into their computerized database, system, and failure to do so would be cause for immediate dismissal. I mean, they're really bang. And a number of senior members, Gwen included, myself, and other senior members said, no, these people need to have their privacy. This is not something that we want in some kind of computerized database, especially since it seemed like there was some three-letter agency clamoring for this information. And I can talk a little bit why my theories why. But I resigned along with a number of other senior members, and then the EST was formed under Les with the Opus group to kind of continue on with the same thing. And I was asked to be part of that group, and I did that for about, I don't know, a year and a half, and left that after a while. I don't know, for personal reasons, life issues. But I continued, I got a website, aliencontactteam.org, which you can go online and find. And I'm still continuing to talk to people. In fact, I talked to a very interesting character about 2 weeks ago who remarkable experience. They're all remarkable. I've probably talked to, I don't know, at least several hundred experiencers by now, if not more. And it's not just through these three groups. It's sometimes I had a garage sale. They walk up to me at the garage sale. I go to have a beer at the local bar here a mile away, and the person that sits down next to me, we get in the conversation, whoa, they're one too, you know. They seem to, the universe seems to send them, like, I've got a job to do. I've
Mhm.
learned a
do.
lot, an awful lot from that, which I think has made me a far better, but maybe too good of a field investigator, where I'll dig in further and I see those bings, bing, 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 you know, coming up that a nuts and bolts field investigator might miss, which annoys people, I think.
Mhm. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for explaining about that. Um, the OPUS that you mentioned, Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, I think Dan and I've talked briefly about this before, but we'll just put in a kind of a plug in here for that, is an organization that is active, that has the experiencer support team. We're all involved, or John was involved with us on that for quite a while. And that is a place to go if you have questions. opusnetwork.org. MUFON does still have the ERT and they still are available. So that's up to you. But we enjoy where we are and we feel that this is a better place for people to go. So that's up to you. Anyway, so, okay, I'll shut up with that.
Or you
Dan,
can go, or you can go to the aliencontactteam.org.
that's right. I'm
There's a
sorry.
third option.
I forget about John's. John has a great website, ACT Alien Contact Team.
Well, it's not great. I cobbled it together because some of the people that were resigning from the ERT said, well, I said, we need to get another, you know, group together so we can continue having confidential conversations. And there was much wringing of hands. Oh, but a website is so hard to do and it's so expensive. And I thought, I don't know anything about websites, but it can't be that hard or that expensive. And I looked into it and it ended up being like, I think I got a 3-year subscription through Wix, WIX. And it was something like $250. I mean, that's not outrageous for 3 years. It was difficult to put together because it's not like working with Microsoft Word. It's some different menu items in there.
It's different.
It can be very confusing. I find it totally frustrating. Every time I get on there to try and make a little change in the site, I have to end up calling the help desk, you know, it's like, but so when you say it's a well put together site, it's kind of getting there, Gwen, but I'm still not super proud of it, but.
Well, when I say it's great, I mean, it's great because it's a great place to connect.
Yeah.
It's an honest place to connect. It may not be the slickest a place that you've ever found. And it doesn't, Opus is a big website and there's a lot of really good stuff, but they have a professional webmaster and have had years to put that together. But the ACT site is there to make contact. So that's a good one to look at. So, okay, Dan, you want to
Well, I
take
was
off
going to take it.
your
I
next
was going
question?
to take off, or like physically levitate or something. So initially, this the reason we wanted John back to come back and talk to us had nothing to do with being a field investigator. It had something more to do with a substance, an interesting substance, which he has used in some of his contact kind of situations, ayahuasca. So, John, do you want to tell us what ayahuasca is and why that's been of help to you and
Well, I
some of your
first heard of
endeavors?
it. I've been interested in metaphysical things, and when Dan sent me a thing saying what kind of topics would you maybe want to talk about, and I sent him a list of about 3 dozen weird sort of topic items, and he's picked this one. But I've been interested in metaphysical things. I don't know. I think maybe this is another lifetime where I have this interest. Since I was like in junior high, like, you know, really young. I was making JB Ryan cards when I was like in 5th grade. You know, I couldn't afford, so I made my own, doing ESP tests, you know, like what's inside the envelope with my friends and brothers and sisters and stuff. But I read in one of my books about this jungle drug back in South America somewhere, telepathine, that William Rice Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg had taken, and they became telepathic. And because I was interested in all this metaphysical paranormal stuff, I thought, ooh, I'd like to try that. kept it in the back of my mind. And then I took a out of body, an astral travel class with a guy named William Bullman, excellent guy. That was about 25 years ago, maybe over 28 years ago, something like that. And through contacts from that class, turned out there was this fellow called John Perkins that was going to go down to South America and take the ayahuasca with the Shuar Indians that he'd made contact with when he was a Peace Corps volunteer down there. And I thought, ooh, I might be interested in that. Finally get a chance to just try this telepathy. So I signed up for it, went down there, totally cold, totally blind, had no idea where I was headed into. My mom, in fact, called me and said, Johnny, why do you have to go to those awful places like the jungle? Can't you go someplace nice like Europe on vacation? You know?
Heaven forbid.
But what is it basically? It seems like thousands of years. What I learned when I was down there, for thousands of years, they've figured out somehow that if you combine these two plants in a pot of boiling water, or maybe you can crush them and heat them up on a fire other ways, I don't know. I think there's one that's a bush and one that's a vine. Now I mix them up, but I think the one with the bush has actually got the DMT in it. It's DMT. People smoke it as well. It's become quite popular. I've not tried it, smoking it here. I don't feel drawn to, nor do I feel drawn to do ayahuasca anymore. I think I've been there, done that, but I'm not adverse to it. But the bush, I think, has got the actual DMT in it. The only problem is if you actually eat the leaves from the bush, your stomach enzymes and acids will immediately get rid of the DMT. So you need, it's called an MAO inhibitor. And I think that comes from the vine. So you cook the two together. Now you got the DMT plus the MAO inhibitor, and you get a buzz. People would be angry. Shamans and apprentices would be angry if I called it a buzz, but it is a chemical buzz. But it is very spiritual as well. That's why they would be upset with my calling it a buzz. You know, it's, and the fact that you've got the MAO inhibitor in there keeps your stomach acids in that from immediately destroying the DMT. So the DMT will persist and get into your system, and off you go. So I went down there, and Perkins had us choose partners. Okay, who's going to go first and who's going to go second on the first night and the second night, and then the person that doesn't go on the first night will be like the watcher, you know, the caretaker of the person that does take the ayahuasca the first night. And my partner that we chose, he said, oh, I want to go the first night. And I thought, great, because I don't know what's going to happen with this shit. And if this guy goes absolutely stark raving mad, I'm not taking it the next night, you know. But he was okay. He wanted to go lay down in his cot, and it was actually kind of boring. But I got a contact buzz from it, which is weird. But I am sensitive in those ways. I mean, from my years of metaphysical and different spiritual practices, I can pick up on stuff. Maybe I was picking up on it, got kind of a contact high, but I was getting a buzz just sitting there with them on the first night. The next night was my turn, and I drank the stuff. It's awful. It's the thing I can compare it to perhaps is I've never drunk dog diarrhea, but it might be pretty much like drinking dog diarrhea. I mean, your first impulse is to immediately throw up. And in fact, part of the typical setup in an ayahuasca ceremony, they call them ceremonies, is everybody gets a little bucket in front of them so they can puke. And I've recorded these ceremonies. I actually gave away some recordings to people, and basically all you hear is, you know, the shaman will be singing, and then you'll hear, bleh, 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 you know. Well, well, this leads me in a couple of different directions, but I'll try and don't remind me about the puking. I'll get back to that. There's a very good story with that.
That's hard to forget.
But I was waiting around thinking, okay, what's going to happen? And the first thing I noticed was there was this loud electronic sort of sound. It was like zit, 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 zit. And I was looking around going, we're in the middle of a jungle. I'm in a grass hut. There's a little fire here. It's nothing. It sounded like a fluorescent ballast or something going bad. And I turned to the people around me and I said, what the hell's that sound? They went, what sound? I said that zzz, 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 zzz sound. And one of the more experienced guys turned to me and said, oh, that's the ayahuasca. It's announcing itself. Oh, never had a beer or a joint or a chemical announce itself before. And off I went. After a while, John Perkins came over, and what had happened was you close your eyes and just your mind's eye is just filled with all these visuals, amazing things, absolutely amazing. Some of the, I'll show you a little bit, but some of the designs I saw, I realized later on that the Inca temples, the Mayan temples, the Aztec temples are covered with the same sort of designs like I saw in my visions. And I thought, I know where those people got that design from. They were taking the ayahuasca as well. But what after a little bit, it only took a little while, I found myself in this city somewhere. It seemed to be on an astral plane, and the gates swung open and everybody's like human looking monk type people with monk's robes on, very cheerful, saying to me, welcome to our city. And I realized that this city, I felt like this city was something like 35 or 40,000 years old. And it included the souls of people that had also taken ayahuasca and all gathered together on the astral plane together so they could hang out together. Then I was being taken through the gates into the city up to a temple where they were initiating me in this temple. This big temple looked like, I don't know, like a church type or government building type thing with steps leading up to it and pillars. Very, very real looking. And it was at that point John Perkins came over. He was checking on us and said, so John, how you doing? I said, I'm doing okay. And he said, what are you seeing? And I described this temple and these beings, and they were initiating me. And he went, ooh, that's good. He said, ask them what your purpose in life is. And I thought, by this time, I'd already grown to distrust Perkins. There was something about him that was a little shady. And he goes on in his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, to kind of confirm my suspicions. But the listeners can pick that up. It's actually a pretty good book. I'd recommend it. But I thought, I don't want to share my life's purpose with this guy. So I went back into my vision, and there was a woman standing there with she looked very Mexican with like a scarf over her head and like a bag over her shoulder. And I said, can you give me a bullshit purpose to tell Perkins and then keep my real purpose and I'll be back and get it. And she said, okay. I don't know if she said okay or in Spanish, or something. I don't know. So I got this bullshit purpose and I told Perkins, and he kind of scrunched up his face and went, what? Okay, John, whatever, have a good time. And he wandered off to talk to somebody else. Then I went back into my vision and I looked around for this woman, and she had disappeared, but she had gone around the backside of the temple down this side street. And so I followed her down there, caught up with her, and I then said, okay, I'm back. Can you now tell me my real purpose? Now, I don't know. I've smoked a lot of pot, not much lately. I've just been there, done that. I've taken a lot of chemicals in my college days. I've never had those kind of visions with beings there. It was a real world as far as I'm concerned. I know Terrence McKenna talks about the machine elves. I've never, but he maybe does more smoking at DMT. That's maybe that's peculiar to smoking DMT, but it's the same compound. But man, I was having very, very powerful visions of what seemed to be very real astral worlds to me. I wanted to get back to the
Puking.
The puking, yeah, thank you. You didn't forget. It's stuck in your mind for some
Didn't
reason. Huh?
forget.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
I was
tried
at
to get it
another.
out of there.
I went back. I've actually worked with probably close to, I don't know, 10 or so shamans over the years during that particular time period of about maybe 4 or 5 years. And this was back in the late 90s and early 2001, 2002 period. So well before it became popular. It seems to have become popular now. But I went down to Peru with my former girlfriend, and we ran across this shaman who was offering ayahuasca journeys, and I thought, why not? You know, we're here. There's the opportunity. So we did. He was pretty good, I thought. And again, it was in a little hut, a little light, maybe a candle or something. That's typically how they're done, in the dark, real quiet. The only thing you hear is the shaman singing what they call icaros. And icaros are like little songs. They're given to the shaman. They kind of come from the shaman. And they're along the lines of something like kind of a thing like that. And the South Americans, they like to puke when they drink the ayahuasca. I think they have problems with intestinal parasites, so maybe that's why it's popular. You get those buggers out of there. But they say, oh, it's good. It's good to puke because you get rid of the bad things in you, the energies, gets out the bad jujus from you. But I'm an old hippie from like the 60s, and when you smoked a joint back in the 60s, you didn't blow it out right away. You held it in as long as possible because you tried to maximize the effect. And I thought, I'm not puking this stuff out. I went to all this trouble to ingest. It's like a waste of a good high. I'm going to hold it in as long as I can. So I think I only puked once in all my sessions, and that was, I can tell you about that. That was one time. It was a very powerful thing I went through in one ceremony. But I wasn't puking. Everybody else in the group was puking, and the shaman said to me, there was one of the things I discovered too is that I could see much better through my eyelids, through my closed eyes, than I could with my eyes open. And by much better, I mean I could see more of what was there. I continued to have this ability, but I think I may have had it a little bit before I worked with the shamans, just a tiny bit, but I really have it now where I can, if I'm in a group of people or in an area where there might be ghosts or entities of some sort, if I close my eyes, I can see the entity. I've seen angels that way. I've seen spirit guides, people's spirit guides and that. But I think it started with the ayahuasca, because I noticed that I could see things. Like a villager would come to the shaman during our ceremonies and try for a healing. And as the villager sat or kneeled in front of the shaman and the shaman worked on him, I could see the person's aura. Like, I don't see auras normally. Once or twice.
So
I could see the person's aura around him, and the shaman was like, he had this little bundle of leaves. They made this little sort of sound, and he would go around their aura, and I could see sparkles in the person's aura as he went around. Anyway,
let me jump in. Let me jump in and ask you a question. So
I may answer it, I may not.
well, okay, then it's your choice.
Go.
So I guess it's a chicken or egg kind of thing. So does the ayahuasca enhance your ability to see certain things, or are you just seeing the hallucinogenic effects of the ayahuasca?
I'll answer that in a bit, and I think a big answer will be in the story I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
All right. The short answer, I've been able to confirm some things that I've seen in my visions. Okay. The long answer is, I'll continue with the story. So I'm not puking in this hut. When I closed my eyes, I could see there was a little old man 2 seats over from me. I could see the whole group, but it's about a half dozen people, and 2 seats over from me were like in a half circle around the shaman who was in the center, and he had a little candle in front of him. And about 2 seats over from me was this little old man. And the little old man, I heard him say to the shaman in Spanish, hey, tell the gringo, necesita vomitar. He needs to vomit, you know. And so the shaman relayed that to me. Senor, necesita vomitar. You need to vomit. And I said, no me gusta vomitar. I don't want to vomit. And then the little old man said to the shaman, no, es importante. Necesita vomitar. It's important. He needs to vomit. And the shaman said, Senor, es importante. Necesita vomitar. And I said, no me gusta. And the shaman went, and he gave up. After the whole ceremony was over and they turned on a lantern or something, I looked around and I thought, where the hell is this little old man? I didn't see him. I said to the shaman, what happened to the little old man that was here? He said, there was no little old man here. I said, yes, there was. I said, he's the guy that told you that I needed to vomit. Oh, him, he said. He said, that's my father. He said he used to be a shaman as well when he was alive, but he's dead now. But he comes to my ceremonies every once in a while to help out. So when you call them hallucinations, Dan, I was in one session and I decided to wander around a little bit. Sometimes the shamans would come and take me places. I decided to wander around. So I went down to the center of the earth. When I see angels, they in my other spheres of my life, sometimes they to me, I don't know if they're angels. I call them angels, but they seem to be doing important spiritual things. And the couple of times I've seen them, they always appear to me as middle-aged guys with white robes on, no wings or anything, and they're doing something very important. I can talk about that a little bit if you like, but when they see me, they kind of turn to me slowly and look at me and as if to say, what the F are you looking at, buddy? They have that look, and then they slowly turn their head back and continue doing what they're doing. When I went down to the center of the earth, I encountered these several beings down there, and they were surprised to see me down there. What are you doing down here? And I said, what are you doing down here? And then one of them, the guy with a rectangular head, sort of like a shoebox sized head, said to me, we're maintaining the earth. I went to Hawaii later on, a couple of years later, on a business trip. It really was a business trip. And before I left, I thought I'd like to go and pick up some kind of like tourist type stuff. So I went into a tourist place, and you know, the Hawaiians have this thing about, you know, the god Pele that brings the magma, the volcanic stuff from the center of the earth, you know. And in the shelves, they had some statues of Pele. I'm pretty sure it was Pele, one of their gods, Pele. And it looked just like the guy I saw in the center of the earth with the rectangular head. And I almost cried out in the store. I almost said, I've met this guy. So when you say, Dan, it's hallucinations, I don't know. The Icaros are kind of interesting too. They I don't know what your drug or alcohol experiences have been, but I've never. One of the things the shamans could do is sometimes I'd be all coming down from the effects of the ayahuasca and nothing more was occurring. So I thought, well, I'll just sit here quietly until everybody else, you know, is ready, and then they'll turn the lights up, but I'll just sit here quietly. And then as I'm sitting there and nothing happening anymore, the shaman would start to sing his Icaro. And suddenly it'd be like, boom! and I'd be there again. I'd have that high going on again.
Hmm.
And at the same time, sometimes I'd be like really like involved in my visions, and the shaman for some reason decided it was time to finish the session, and he would say, "Es fini," it's over. And suddenly it was totally over. I thought, how the hell does he do that? I've never had anybody been able to walk up to me after drinking a 6-pack and say, "You're sober."
It's over there.
And like that, I'm sober. Or after smoking a joint and say, "You're straight." Or when I'm straight to say, "You're stoned." But the shamans could do that.
Mhm.
They're pretty good. The guy that was in the hut with his father, that I met the ghost.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that when we first got there, it was sort of raining a little bit, but then it calmed down. Let me preface the story with another one. At one point, I asked the shamans, "What do you see your future?" There was a group of them I was talking to that was in Ecuador. I said, "What do you see your future in the modern world? I mean, your kids are walking around with blue jeans on and t-shirts, and they got sunglasses on. They're obviously not going to be wanting to be shaman. They want to go to the big city and party, like everybody else, every other young person. What do you see as the future of shaman?" "Oh," they said, they'll always need shaman. Who will bring the rain?" And I thought, you're fooling yourselves. The rain's going to come anyways, But as I sat in this hut with this shaman, the one whose father's ghost appeared, and it was like just raining had reduced to a drizzle, and now it was quiet. The shaman would start his little Icaro. And as soon as he started singing it, there'd be a bolt of lightning that would crackle. And a rain would start lashing the outside of the roof, the outside of the little hut. And the first time it happened, I thought, huh. A little while later, the rain had died down again, and the shaman started singing his little Icaro again. And again, just as he started singing, a big bolt of lightning. And rain started lashing the roof. And I thought, huh, that was a funny coincidence. And then the
Oh,
rain
sure.
died down. And then the shaman, after a while, started singing Zacaro again. And again, the lightning went. And I thought, this is no coincidence, man. This guy is affecting the weather, just like the other shaman said.
So define, I'm sure there are people listening to this who are asking themselves, what is a shaman? So what would you tell them?
Well, I've talked to people that say, "I took a couple classes in college and I got a certificate and I'm now a shaman,"
Yeah.
Or I took a course, no, that's not how you become a shaman. You don't take a couple classes or read some books or take a weekend seminar to become a shaman. It comes to you. You're generally recognized as a shaman. You don't proclaim yourself to be a shaman. Not a real shaman. I guess some of the techniques can be learned. Like I could teach you a technique and you could probably use it. But does that make you a real shaman? These guys are expert at manipulating and working in the astral realms. And I call it the astral realms. I think I'm very correct about that. They're not seeking nirvana. They're not trying to get cosmic consciousness. Some of them may approach that, but they're more working in the astral. I guess I've been able to do some of that stuff myself as a result, perhaps, of the ayahuasca. I don't know. But they can go, and one of the shamans took me to, and I was sitting not puking, of course, sitting in the hut one time and working with this other shaman. He was from Peru. And he said, "Come on, John." He came to me in my visions and said, "Come on, John, I'm going to show you a few things." And so he kind of took me by the hand in my mind's eye And we flew up above the rooftops of the village that we were in, the buildings. We were maybe about 10 feet, 20 feet above the rooftops flying out. And he took me to this, among other places he took me to this place. He said, there's a really big tree. And he was pointing out that at each branch of the tree, he would go to this tree when he wanted to get some knowledge. Like this branch, he's trying to explain to me, this branch here has knowledge about this topic, and this branch here has knowledge about this topic. And I don't recall that, but I'd never heard of that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe when I was a Catholic kid, you know, in first and second grade, maybe they talked about the tree of knowledge. I never paid any attention. It wasn't a big metaphysical topic for me. But then after this experience, I went and I started looking up this tree, and geez, almost every religious system in the world, or a lot of them, speak about a tree of knowledge. I've been there. I learned about it. One day, one of the sessions, Perkins came up to me and said, well, John, how's it going now? And I mentioned Perkins, just, he was an interesting character, but they were my first experiences. And I said, well, I'm being cut into pieces. I'm being chopped into pieces. I'm seeing myself being chopped. Ooh, he said, that sounds terrible. I said, no, actually, it feels really good. I've seen myself being eaten by anaconda snakes. I don't know. Like I said, I went down there with an idea of this telepathy, learning about this drug. I happened to find myself with a bunch of people in the group that were pretty much all shamans or learning to be shamans. I didn't know anything about shamanism, but it turned out later on, when I read later on, shaman apprentices often experience that, being dismembered, being eaten by anaconda snakes. I experienced all that before I knew anything about the topic. I mean, it was pretty amazing. The shamans seem to kind of recognize that too. Like, I wasn't just down there to get credits and a certificate. I really wanted to learn something. And a couple of them commented, I don't know, I don't want to boast, so I won't say too much, but one of them gave me this. I wanted to show this to you, if I can get it off the wall. Well, here. See that bow-like thing that's hanging up above the door?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the shamans, he had used that in a ceremony. He sang guitarros, but that's an instrument. They put their lip on one side, there's a little sticky like wax there, and then they strum the string and make these like doing 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 doing, like a kazoo or something. And the day we left, he gave that to me. He handed it to me. I don't know why. And he just recognized something in me, I think. And Perkins was very upset. Why did he give that to you? I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. We don't want to keep you too much longer, but
I'm
there are a
blubbering
couple.
away. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's fascinating. There are a couple of questions I like to ask before we get, and then maybe Dan will have some more that we can close out with. But very, very interesting. Some people who have done ayahuasca or other kinds of hallucinogenic plants have talked about something called Mother Ayahuasca. And some people have said that Mother Ayahuasca is loving and caring. And some people have said that she basically just knocks the crap out of you. And it depends on what your needs are. So did you have an experience that you came out of it and thought, oh, wow.
I definitely agree. They talk about the spirit of the ayahuasca. I've not heard it referred to as Mother Ayahuasca, but the spirit of the ayahuasca. I mean, the things I was being shown, the ayahuasca, there's a world there. I was offered once by one of the shaman's apprentices, hey, John, maybe you might be interested in coming down and studying with us for like a month. You take ayahuasca every day for 30 days. You'll be a changed person afterwards. And I thought, yeah, I bet you I would be. I mean, I might be start raving mad afterwards. I didn't take him up on it, but another shaman once, a shaman's apprentice said to me, John, when you drink the ayahuasca, do you have an intention? No, I said, I just take it and, like dropping mescaline and enjoying the
Mhm.
buzz, No, he said, it's important. You should have an intention. And I do agree with him now. You should have an intention because you've got a powerful opportunity to learn. The ayahuasca will show you things that may not be pleasant, but they're things that will help you. I decided on an intention that next session that I had with the ayahuasca. I thought, well, I just had gone through a divorce after being married for 28 years and was pretty despondent about it. That's part of the reason I was drawn to go on this trip in the jungle, not knowing what the hell I was getting into, because I didn't really care anymore. I mean, that was about as close to a suicidal period I had in my life. I mean, I was walking around barefoot in the jungles and everybody else had big, tall, knee-length rubber boots. And they were admonishing me, John, don't walk around barefoot. You could get some kind of, I don't care. I really didn't. And taking this drug with these Shuar Indians, the people that used the blowguns and shrunk heads, and I'm out away from civil, I didn't care. But I was wondering why I asked a question. I had that intention beforehand. Why was I married for 28 years? Only to have it end in divorce. What was the purpose of that? Was it just to have my daughter? And in the visions, the first thing I saw myself walking with this big, heavy casket on my back, bent over. And I was told, you need to put the casket down and stand up straight so you can go with your head raised high and go through the rest of your life and not bent over carrying around this casket of your dead marriage with you. I thought that was pretty good advice. I'm not sure it came from me. I think it came from the spirit of the ayahuasca. It was telling me something I needed to know. And then the second part of the answer was, no, the purpose was not so much for you to have your daughter, but that your daughter would have a kid who would be important when humanity split into two branches. One part would ascend and the other part would continue on watching TV, bowling, and eating pizza. The other part would be ascending. I'm not sure what that meant. I'd never heard of it before. Like I said, I didn't go down there studied and ready to, practice what I'd learned, in my studies. I had no idea what I was getting into. And these visions just came to me. Afterwards, I started looking it up and I thought, wow, there are a number of people who talk about the splitting of humanity. Not a lot, but a number. And nobody knows quite what it's about. Dolores Cannon, in her book, The 3 Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth, gets into it. But even then, she doesn't really have a real good idea of what it's about. But I point this out sometimes to people when I'm talking to experiencers. Sometimes I say, I relate this story to them. And the reason is because they feel like they have a sense of mission, but often they can't recall what it is. I feel like I have a sense of mission, but I don't have any idea what it is. And I say, first of all, that's what a lot of people say. And it's almost like when the time comes, you'll know what to do. But I think your sense of mission, I do think you need to prepare. I mean, meditate a little bit more, try and get more tuned in, because I think something is coming soon. And why do I say that? Because of the splitting of humanity. I mean, I've read about it and people talk, well, it's coming sometime in the future. Is it 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now? I say, no, it's going to be soon. Because I was shown in my visions that it's going to be within my grandkids' lifetime. That's not that far away. In fact, the 3 of us and anybody else that listens to this, may be seeing the beginnings of it already. I'm not sure I'll see the exciting climax. I don't know if I'll live long enough, but my grandkids will. So it's not that far away. So it's worth preparing a little bit by meditation or whatever. That was one of the things I learned. So to address your, in a long-winded way, Gwen, the spirit of the ayahuasca teaching us stuff. These weren't hallucinations. I mean, it wasn't like suddenly everything got real colorful, like when you smoke a joint or, my hand could go through my other hand, you know, like when you're on acid or something. These were powerful learning things. You could learn from this. You really were on other dimensions. And anybody that's thinking of doing it, I wouldn't do it as a party thing. It's something that should be done, preferably with someone that knows what they're up to, a shaman. It's probably good to. There's some other cautions I could offer, but don't take it lightly. It's a sacrament. It really is. Should take it with intention.
Thank you. My last question, I think, is going to be, I'd like to kind of go backwards a little and kind of go back to where you were talking about your experience, that things that you recall happening to you that were not necessarily pleasant. There was a very well-known writer who we all know very well, Graham Hancock, who did a little bit of a study on comparing experiencers that real, true shaman who use plant hallucinogens see and experience when they're in this trance or their experience, and alien abductees, people who are claimed to be or believe they've been abducted by aliens. And as we all know, having worked with many people like that, there are frequently experiences that people describe of having their bodies, things done to their bodies, having their bodies opened up, having their bodies cut, having things done. So he found actually that the shaman were experiencing things like that too, like you said you did. And experiencers or abductees are experiencing that together. So I know you've had some contact experiences, which we haven't had time to talk about yet, but what do you think about that? He thinks that maybe they're not actually spirits, but they're ETs, or they're not actually ETs, they're spirits. What's your opinion on that?
I think they're all of the above. I remember having a discussion once in the ERT. We had a Zoom one time, and somebody asked rather naively, I thought, well, how can you tell if they're ETs or are they demons? I spoke up and I said, there's a whole lot more that's out there than just ETs and demons. I mean, there's ghosts, for example. There's higher level beings. There's elementals. There's negative entities. There's all kinds of different beings out there. And I think the ETs, the fact that they communicate almost exclusively, I mean, there's a rare occasion I've heard of where they do make some sounds or reports of them talking, but I think that's extremely rare. Most of the time, their communications are telepathic. The way they can traverse space and time, they can manipulate time and space. These guys are way advanced. And that includes the topic of telepathy. They use it in everyday communications. They're not doubting that it exists. They're quite comfortable with the concept, and probably many other concepts. I was asked early on even before I became an FI, I was at a MUFON meeting, and they said, well, what do you think? How do you think they get from to here? I said, I don't think they travel in the 3D world we live in, where there's a limit, you know, you can only go as fast as the speed of light. I think from my own experiences, and I go like this, I'm crazy, but from my own experiences, that you can travel at the speed of thought on the astral plane. And so I think I used a maybe humorous little story of Fred and Martha sitting on their planet somewhere in the Pleiades, and Fred turns to Martha and says, say, would you like to go to Earth and get some fresh water and tomatoes for dinner? And she goes, oh, that sounds lovely. So they hop in their craft, they pop up into the astral, they're at the Earth at the speed of thought. They drop into the 3D world. They get some fresh tomatoes from Earth. They get a bucket of water, get back in their craft, whoop, hop back to their planet at the speed of thought. That's how I think it works. I think they're quite, and then when they're in the astral like that, there's all these other beings there. Mm-hmm. There's the angels, there's a higher consciousnesses, there's the ghosts, there's the element, there's all those beings. They're very familiar with that. It's a milieu up there. So to say that the shaman is like the people comparing ET experiences to near-death experiences. Well, that's one thing. There's a whole bunch of other types of experiences. I mean, I could talk about some of the other ways I've traveled about. But it's not either or. There's a whole milieu of different things. Just because a shaman might see, like I saw myself being dismembered, doesn't mean that that's just like being aboard an alien craft where they stick a needle in your belly. No, it's similar, but
Thank you. Yeah. Dan, anything you want
Well,
to
I
close
feel
with?
this overwhelming desire to take some ayahuasca. But I want to thank John for coming on with us. I enjoy John. Glad I had an opportunity to meet him. And by the way, Glenda says hello to you. I told her we were going to be on with you.
all
So
right.
thanks for coming on. I don't know who's coming up. What do we have on the schedule coming up?
I'm not sure that we have anybody nailed down right now, but we have a lot of things that we're working on.
Yeah.
So, keep watching.
Yeah, but thanks, John, for being with
Sure.
us.
Thank you. Fascinating.
Take care.
Okay, take care. All right. Bye-bye.